Thank you. All right, so that's everybody. I think that I'm really glad to see a lot of new faces. I feel like, we've been doing these little mobile Fab Lab roundups for as long as I've been coming to Fab conferences for like 5 years now. And there's a bunch of people here who've not come to them in the past. So I think growing the community of our little, like Aiden said, we are a different beast than the stationary labs, and we need to have a even stronger little community within to try and keep sane. So here's our list of everybody. If Trevor or Andrew can figure out their stuff and want to jump in and talk to us, just, shout. But so looking back at what we did last year, Aiden sent me over some notes and we kind of talked about some different things. We talked with Alethea, who also works with Aiden in Boston, about what they're doing in their mobile lab and what they kind of thought that this group could come up. But last year we had about 22 people. It was a lot about what the pandemic had how it was affecting the work that labs had done in that, spring, early summer that had happened when we met last year, and what plans were for the fall. So I feel like a lot of people were in that, like, let's make as many masks as humanly possible and like create PPE like crazy. And now, at least in my lab, that kind of has died down. Like, no one is messaging us and asking us to 3D print things, or teachers aren't frantically trying to make room dividers for their classrooms anymore. There's also a lot of discussion around creating projects shared across different mobile Fab Labs, either sharing projects, so just here's what I do and it works, and I want to give it to you and you want to give me yours, and like project swap, but also creating some kind of larger projects that could be done cooperatively, either across the country, across the world, just across town. But that was kind of the big takeaways from last year's discussion. So for this year, continuing those conversations, but also really focusing on growing this community that we have and trying to gather more, I guess, structured information about how many of us are out there and how many of us have information to share, resources to share. There, like you said, people might be starting a new lab, and it might be nice to be able to just type in a search engine and see, oh, hey, there's someone right around the corner that I didn't know. Corey and I actually, before he moved to New Haven, Corey and I worked in school districts less than 15 minutes apart from each other, and we didn't meet until we were in Chile at the conference. So being able to really like have a network not only exist when we're together each summer, but whenever we need it to be. Definitely continuing to share the projects, maybe working in creating new projects. And then, like Aiden said, share each other's successes and failures, but also just have someone to talk to. I think not only are we strange beasts, but we're lonely beasts. There's only so many of us weirdos who drive around a bus or a truck or a trailer trying to make cool stuff. So, it's hard to kind of go home and talk with your coworkers or talk with your partner about your hard day at work when your day at work was very, very weird. So based on some conversations, based on these these objectives with other people that I talked to in the mobile world, we've kind of got these like 6 topics that we can decide as a group either to pick a couple of them or kind of go through the list. But thinking again, shared projects or cooperative projects, best practices. I know when I started, when I got handed the keys to a mobile lab and they said good luck, I was much more interested in the practices around how to do this on wheels and not what to do on wheels. Mobile versus stationary. I think that people who work in stationary labs don't get that what we do is different and needs to be different, and we can't just take them stationary units or lessons and be able to just lessons, activities, projects, whatever kind of stuff you're doing. If you are an education lab looking at teacher professional development, and actually I think the bigger theme of this one isn't necessarily teacher PD, but just leaving a mark on wherever you go with your mobile fab. So if you are a teacher or if you're working in education, I take my lab to schools. I want to do something with the teachers so that fabrication keeps happening even when I leave. And if you're maybe a more community-based mobile fab lab and you're going from town to town or village to village, what can you do to kind of leave behind so that you're not just a 1-week experience? we can still talk about how COVID's affecting us and how it's going to affect moving forward now that there's a lot of guidelines coming out for what's going to be happening in now that we're kind of in this like vaccine world. And then lastly, what the difference between these labs are and why do we have to have them in these like 3 little buckets, and can we kind of keep those buckets, smush them all together and have education labs be doing more community work and focusing on entrepreneurship and things like that. So what I was kind of actually, I think chat. Oh, Trevor messaged us. He works in Tulsa too. Oh, great. Hi, Trevor. Hi, Andrew. Andrew's in field ready and he's interested to hear about this stuff. Okay, cool. So what I was hoping to do was we could do some breakout sessions. And do you have anything to add, Liz, before we break stuff up?
We might want to do like vote on what we're going to talk about in the sessions.
Yeah. So
I like the ideas, and I think I wanted to say that I get the feeling that there are a lot of people here without mobile Fab Labs that are kind of here to learn about them, but I might be wrong on that. I seem to remember a few of us not having labs at all.
right.
So where would we put those people?
I think that
Maybe best practice, wherever they want to
yeah,
go.
I think either best practices to learn more logisticy things, or shared projects if you want to talk about like what kinds of projects can be done within a mobile Fab Lab, or possibly mobile versus stationary if maybe your only experiences have been in a stationary lab and you'd want to talk a little bit about how that transfers to mobile world.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking that, the first bullet point would be group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5, and group 6. And I'm just going to make 6 breakout rooms. You can kind of choose where you want to go. If you find yourself in a room with no one else there, feel free to, bounce back and we can send you on to a different room. And then I'm going to drop this Jamboard link into the chat so everybody can click on this one. There's enough slides for everybody to each group to have their own Jamboard slide, and then we can just kind of keep track of what we're talking about with some sticky notes. If you want to throw your name down at the bottom so we can see who is, if someone comes back I'm like, oh yeah, I was talking to so and so about whatever. But it's an excellent way that we can kind of share things out and get going.
Sarah, can you share those breakout chat topics in the chat, and then I'll set up the breakout rooms?
Yeah, they are in the they're at the they're on like each page of the
Oh,
Jamboard
okay.
too, just so that you can decide what you're talking about.
I have a specific question. How do you deal with temperature issues? In the district, it's really hot and humid in the summer, and in the winter it's cold. You risk your laser tubes freezing. How do you deal with those? Or which breakout session do you think I should participate in?
I think that's probably like a best practices or logistics of mobile Fab Lab management. I think also if you have like super specific questions that don't get addressed, you can always just drop stuff in the chat. We can come back together and kind of hive mind answer those. I know I have different issues being up in Cleveland than Nathan does down in Tulsa. And I'm sure if you're trying to create a lab in West Africa, then that's going to have its own other slew of problems. So yeah, but we could definitely talk about those in the best practices one, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm opening up the breakout rooms. Everyone should be able to self-select into whichever room you want. But if you find that you can't self-select, just type in the chat what room you'd like to go to, 1 through 6. And then I'll put you there. Room 2 is quite popular, Sarah.
Interesting.
Nathan, where do you want to go? Nathan and Trevor. And Aiden, both Aidens.
I couldn't decide, so I didn't go anywhere.
Do you want to pick anyone and then we can kind of split up and
Do you want to put me in something that's empty or that needs a body? And
Who's
yeah,
Zoom?
I'm multitasking at work. I'm actually supposed to be on another Zoom call right now on SEL. It's a weird day.
I feel you, Nathan. Kind of how I am too.
so I'll jump to room 2.
I want to
Okay.
be with Aiden. This is Melvin.
Hey, Melvin.
Hi, Melvin.
Let's see. I'll join 2 just to hear what the conversation's all about. And I'll be on my phone, so we'll be off video, but I'll be part of the conversation at least until I get home.
Everyone's in 2.
Couple folks in 6.
What's 6 about? Let me see.
6 was the entrepreneurship community.
I'll go to 6.
I'm gonna go to 2 then. We'll switch with our powers combined. Okay, so it's like 5:30, so go until like 6:20.
That's a lot. What if we do half and half?
Half and half of
Yeah, like
Each
choose like
room?
2 sessions. I don't know.
okay,
It's 50, that's you're talking about a 50-minute breakout session.
and then
I was thinking we split it in half.
I'm sorry, I was thinking that it's already 6 o'clock. Mom
Oh,
brain.
it's 5:30 right now.
5:30. Yeah. So like, how about 5:45, 5:50?
5:50, perfect.
That's what I meant. Like, yeah, 20 minutes is what I'm
Okay.
thinking. 20 minutes.
All right,
Sorry.
all right. I got it. I'm good.
Sorry. Okay.
can I be host again so that I can take the breakout rooms?
Yeah, you're host again.
Okay, thanks. We were stuck for a minute.
It's my sister. Don't worry, she's learning.
Hi, Brian. See you there.
Did I miss the fun?
Yeah, we're just coming back from breakout rooms right now.
Oh, okay.
Just give us about
That's
20,
fine.
20 more seconds.
I told you today, first full day of school, so it's been a
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. You guys are crazy.
Hi, Brian.
hey Sarah. This is like the one session I wanted to be in on time and it didn't work out that way. So thank you.
Okay. We'll let it go this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so in group 2, we talked a lot about like really specific logistics, especially about like Liz was saying, a lot of people in there don't have a lab but are interested in starting one or are just getting one going. So people really wanted to know about like how long we stay at a school, how long we work with kids, how many kids, what were some specific projects, which we actually didn't get to talk to about that one. And like Kent was saying before, the weather, what do you do when it's freezing out and it's raining or whatnot? What did you guys in group 6 talk about?
We talked about, well, we only had 3 people in our group. So we talked from 3 very different regions with very different challenges. So it was interesting. We talked about the community needs of where our particular labs are, and the differences in trying to work with the communities. We talked about working with higher ed people and governments, and just the challenges that each of us face. I would say my colleagues more than me facing more challenges, but it was a really, really interesting conversation. So I went a little bit deeper into our program since there was just a few of us.
Great.
One of the things we talked about also, like I just wanted to add in, like so which these were like properly put out. Like, so what happens, like you give some, like in case of mobile fab labs, like we go to a school in a place where like they don't have access to those kind of things, and they get access for a day or two for the whole toys and stuff, cool stuff, and like that goes away. Like, so how do we make like that thing in a more regular basis? Like, so when you talk about like just one bus going to one particular area, that do some activity and like maybe visit that school like maybe 1 year later or like 6 months later, and like what happens in between that phase is very like this, like it doesn't like that doesn't continue. Maybe the passion dies or we lose like more people out of those ideas. So those are the problems like we thought like should be discussed and like try to find a solution. Jeffrey also put out like how he's like the stationary lab, like how we can like talk about like having our stationary fab labs, like design mobile fab labs, like itself can like design mobile fab labs, and like how fab labs can not only be a place where like for the even the rural places or even in schools, like how we can like support the economy, like basically in places like where like procuring or running a micro like a fab lab is very difficult, like how maybe like the products that come out of a fab lab can be again like used to like develop the economy, and like maybe sell few things, or like students can come up with ideas to sell things, and like we are that itself like will help in continuing the Fab Lab process.
That's awesome. I think that going back to a school a year later would be amazing to see how things have changed. I know that I didn't design my Fab Lab, and I wish I could have, and I would change a lot. And I know that the guys who do design Fab Labs are wonderful dudes, but they don't work in a mobile Fab Lab every day. And I wish I could just like, change the cabinets. But Corey did actually design the Fab Lab, the mobile bus trailer. Corey, do you want to talk for a second about how you designed your mobile space and if you would change anything? I know the kids did a lot of it, but talk to us about it.
Yeah, we put a Fab Lab in an old school bus, and so part of that was bolting down. We like built custom carts for each machine. We had one that was built to like hold a vinyl cutter and a computer inside, so that you'd have like the whole piece of kit all in one shot, and then you could mount those in. We did that full design work, and then for business reasons, they didn't like our design as much as a professional contractor, and so they went with that, which turned out okay, not bad, but none of the machines could come off of the bus because they bolted them down, which is smart for, they don't walk off that way. But having custom, there was also a brief period of time where we had built these carts. We'd built like 2 carts, and the bus didn't exist yet, and so they were very happy to like wheel in things and show them off. And I would 100% say, if you have the opportunity to build your own cabinets and your own furniture with a big lab to support a small lab, it can make your life a lot easier, because you can decide exactly where you want to attach things, how you want them to connect, and you can really customize a lot. But that's a whole host of skills and time and access that you have to have in addition to the lab. You have to have another lab, basically.
You need a lab within a lab, and then a lab just to make a lab, and then you need like 28 people to run the lab, and there's no money, and everyone's really tired.
But I have those design files. I can find them and put them in the chat. Give me a second.
There we go. So still muted? No, I'm good. Before we kind of let it open up and just have some more opportunity for specific questions, or if anyone needs to hop off and go to any other sessions, or, I know it's getting late where we are, at least. Share this screen. Something that we did talk about last year at our breakout session, and I'm sorry, last year in this mobile meetup, and I know I've been having this in my mind for the past 5 years, is creating a mobile Fab Lab mini community newsletter. And I'm doing this, like this is happening. I'm creating this newsletter. So I'm going to drop a couple of different links into the chat. The first link is for a mobile lab profile. So if you do have a mobile lab, I'd love for you to take a minute and fill out this really short little, who are you, where are you, what's your links? Shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. If you don't have a mobile lab, but you would like to receive the Mobile Fab Lab monthly newsletter, you can just sign up in the second link, which is just a quick, what's your email? Send you this monthly thing, in which I would love to feature a different mobile Fab Lab each month, maybe do a little tour, share some projects, look at like, we are going to learn from each other's successes and failures, talk about different questions, but then also just have the opportunity to network a little bit. I think that, being able to do this not just once a summer would be really, really helpful for a lot of folks. So I'm going to drop these in. If you could take a minute to fill out one or each or both or whatever, that would be awesome. If I can figure it out. Okay, so this first one is the mobile lab profile. So you're only going to fill that out if you do actually have a mobile Fab Lab that you would like to share information within this community. And the second one is just the newsletter sign up. So everyone is welcome to sign up that too. You can all feel free to send these forms to anybody that you know who you think might want a mobile Fab. Like Liz and I were talking before everything, and we're looking at these being like, okay, we recognize a couple of names on here who we know we have a mobile Fab Lab, but we both know tons of people who don't have mobile, or who do have mobile Fab Labs who aren't here. So I know I'm going to be sending this link directly to them. So if you could just fill out one or both of those, and then if anyone would like to stick around and ask more specific questions about mobile labs, where we'll stick around till 6:30 until our time's up. If not, thank you so much for attending. I hope you guys all got a little something.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for hosting, Sarah.
I'd like to ask William a question. What
Yeah.
what are you planning on using your lab for?
So we're the third Fab Lab in a university. So the other Fab Lab, they've got a whole bunch more experience with it's in another county, and they teach a class on how to make a 3D printer. So they, over the course of 24 hours over a semester, they will teach it and have the kids actually build, design, and make a 3D printer, a rep wrap essentially. And so using that model, we'll be going back to the same school every week. And so it'll be a group of probably 6 schools, I should think, 5 or well, it'll have to be 5 because we won't be able to go on weekends. So 5 schools that we'll hit every week for a semester, and then a different set in the other semester. So it's sort of longer term programs every week hitting the same school. There are only, in this county, there are only 10 schools. So it won't be that hard to hit them all. But that's the idea. So we would then go for a day at a time and then come back next week, see how it all works out. But that's the goal in the first instance. Like I say, it's basically each week bring something different. So I don't think we'll ever fill the trailer completely with all 6 carts. But it'll be more about, okay, this week it's CNC time. This week it's sort of a kind of a, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I really don't. I don't know how well the kids are going to be prepared. The teachers are also, I mean, I see you nodding, Sarah. You've got some experience with that. And shop class is always going to be a challenge, doing it safely. And these are German schools where the whole concept of shop just isn't there. It never has been in the academic schools. There's a different, they do streamlining here. So the sort of B and C schools, they do a lot of shop and practical skills, but the A schools, if you like, I don't know if anybody uses A, B, and C anymore, but the gymnasium, we call them here, the academic schools, they have no idea. These kids have never picked up a screwdriver. So we're starting from absolute zero in terms of skill. And then we'll see what year group the teachers are keen. It's the physics teachers, and they are super keen, excited to have us. So that part's not going to be hard. Getting a bunch of, what did you call them? Stinky teenagers to actually pay attention for longer than 20 minutes. That might be a little more complicated. So I will come back and try to occupy this space when we meet in Bhutan, and I can tell you how it went next year.
William, are you doing it during the school day or after school?
Yeah. Well, obviously our school days are really, really short. So the kids go to school 6 days a week, but they go for much shorter time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's an after school club is what the teacher was describing it as. So the Make a 3D Printer one is going to be an after school club that will run every week. So yeah, it makes it easier that way than trying to fit within your 45-minute setup, take down all of that within 45 minutes. I can imagine that's a bit of a challenge, and no, I wouldn't want to take anything out of the trailer in that short a period of time.
What university did you say you're with, or what school?
It's Ryan Wall University. If you've heard Fab Lab Camp Lindfort, then we're the other campus of that same university. So we're as you can see from the buildings, we're still in pretty good shape here. So yeah, it'll be like I say, I'll let you know this year how it went.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad I asked.
And you're in DC?
Yes. If you ever find yourself in DC, stop by the Martin Luther King Jr. Library and go down to the basement.
Okay.
They expanded from 900 square foot Fab Lab to a 2,500 square foot Fab Lab.
So with you guys, with your Fab Labs and libraries, does somebody go around going all the time to the CNC machine? Is that? I said to some of my students that there's Fab Labs in libraries, and they all went, "How do you keep quiet in a Fab Lab?" Anyway, I will be in DC next year, so I'll come by and have a look for sure.
Only among fabbers, when you get
Yeah.
invited to the basement, people are excited. You know, normally that's like run, run, but we're like, oh, the basement. This is what I know Sarah has a great basement too, or she used to.
You should see my basement, Brian. I have a CNC machine in my basement.
Everyone should
Oh.
have a CNC machine in their basement.
They should, absolutely.
Well, to
Yeah.
be clear, it's the garage. We don't use the garage as a garage. It's our Fab Lab. We have a laser cutter and a CNC machine in there. So
That was
There's no reason to leave home.
that was my pandemic. I had everything in the garage. Too.
yeah.
We all did that, didn't we?
I got a laser cutter in my garage.
See? Excellent.
Everyone's trailers are empty and everyone's garages are full. And if anyone asks, they know nothing.
It's in the trailer. Well, I think Dip has better dibs on how late at night it is, but it is midnight. So I'm going to wish you guys a lovely evening, and we'll see you at the next one of these talks.
All right.
Yeah, it's midnight here in Malawi too. So we'll
We'll see you guys later.
Thanks.
It's
Bye.
been it's been
Thanks very
it's
much
been
for-
nice to reacquaint with you.
Yeah, good to see everyone.
So
Okay. See you later. Bye now.
I'm just going to stay on for a minute because as I said, Liz, I'm one of the first projects in my Fab Lab is to build a Fab Lab, build a mobile Fab Lab, and so I'm still trying to figure out size and scope and even program, despite the fact that the interest in the government here is to essentially have a Fab Lab that fabricates educational, ed tech. But I think it's going to expand. I mean, that's just a first. It's because the ed need is so great here, even, pandemic aside. Pandemic just made it, 100 times worse. So no one was getting educated. Because no one had access, no one had devices. There was almost no, online learning even. So I'd be interested in just, some of these designs of, what things to put in the lab and even managing programs. This lab in a shipping container isn't quite a mobile lab. It's not really the same concept that you guys are thinking about as a mobile lab. And I think, although I think some of the things we're doing might actually be better suited because it doesn't take that long to train about building, say, Raspberry Pi, battery, solar panel kits. But then there's a lot of pedagogy involved in, okay, if you're going to 3D print that container, or make utilize an open source, make an open source tablet, or make an open source whatever. So I'm just curious what people think about, that have these labs and what should be in them.
The only advice that I would give is make sure everything has wheels on it. If you do that on the front end and you never roll them, fine. But down the line, if there's somewhere you want to take a machine and it doesn't have wheels on it, it's a much harder on the back end to do that. And once things are able to be rolled, even if you're just going to roll them out in the surroundings around, it effectively doubles your space. On a pretty day, you can roll the 3D printer out front or something like that. But that's one of the things that really was a lifesaver for my lab, is just being able to leave it in place or roll it around and get it where it needs to go.
That also applies to even a stationary Fab Lab, because I've got
absolutely.
I'm starting this in a 20 by 30 meter warehouse, basically 6,500 square feet. And because we don't, the only stationary equipment we have so far is actually automotive lifts. They're not easily movable.
Yeah.
So, but everything else really wants to be moved because we don't know what projects. I mean, right now that, fitting in a 40-foot shipping container actually isn't that difficult in a space that size. We can fit 5 of it. We can work on 5 at a time or smaller ones, but in that case, we need to be able to move equipment around. So
Right.
I think that applies even for
it does, and
stationary ones,
it's just nice to be able to throw something in the back of a car, even to get it somewhere else. It broadens your capability. And one of the things I love most about mobile labs is it's kind of an equity issue. Like if you require students to come to you, sometimes that eliminates a broad band of the students you want to reach. When you at any point, any way, even if you have a stationary lab, anything in that lab that you can take to the students increases your chances of actually helping communities that really need to see these things and can be most impacted by their capabilities.
Yeah. The other question I have is, initially, even before this, stationary Fab Lab, I was thinking about rehabbing a bus, a standard, I mean, here the typical buses either range from a coaster, like a 22-seater, to a standard, what's considered a luxury bus here, and outfitting it. Have people here done that? I see lots of I see tow behind designs, but I'm curious about that. My only real example that I've seen is BioBus out of New York, which isn't really a Fab Lab per se, but it's quite an effective thing.
I've seen the BioBus. I know what you're talking about. We at the Science Center realized pretty soon that the tow behind was a lot for a city. And Pittsburgh is a city with hills and small streets. So we changed it up and built our own actually van-based mobile Fab Lab. So then we had a trailer-based and then a van-based, and the van-based is much simpler. But me personally, I did retrofit once a bus into an RV. So I have experience with a school bus into like doing the retrofit on that as living in a family in the bus. But I've never, we never did it into a Fab Lab. It was just kind of our living while we were working in the circus. We lived on the bus. So it was a very strange time in our lives, but it was a lot of fun. And I would say that it's difficult as an adult to spend a lot of time in the bus because when you get to the sides, you have to be short. So we would make sure that our seating was along the sides, or maybe in your case, it would be the machinery along the sides if you're thinking of school bus. So I would thinking of those big, yes, the circus. So I would think of those big buses might be a little bit easier. The other thing about the trailers is they have this overhead shelving, which is super helpful. And you can't really get that in a typical kind of school bus setting.
And how about any experience with like, 4-wheel drive esque vehicles, because most of Malawi is still rural roads. So our major highway going through the country is 1 lane, and in a lot of places it's not even 1 lane because it's so broken up, et cetera, et cetera. So then it presents other challenges of how
talk about Brian's telling me all about the wheels on your machinery. You really have to make sure those machines are tied down and tight on those types of roads, because the beat up and being careful with the equipment. I mean, at the Science Center, we definitely saw more because we'd roll those machines in and out of the trucks almost every day. And so they got a lot of movement. And so we had to change eventually from our original 3D printers to something else that was more robust just for that particular reason. So thinking about what types of, how much you're spending on your 3D printer is kind of important, because you want it to actually bump and survive.
Yeah, I also think that going off the 3D printer thing, I did the same thing, right? I started off with having Ultimakers attached to the lab, and then you shouldn't have a $3,000 3D printer in a mobile fab lab, period. Like, get different machines, and then if you're going to be getting a smaller, more robust, or even not thinking about the robust nature of it, if you don't plan on creating stuff that people are going to be using for everyday use, but instead are trying to spark some kind of small engineering seed, then you can buy really cheap, tiny 3D printers, and then can you afford to not take it with you? Instead of worrying about keeping it bolted down in the trailer, can you just open up a box every time you get to a new school, and then it's a $250 leave behind, versus having to pack it all up and take it away. So I think that it's sorry, I just read Kent's comment, circus.
It was a weird time.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to hearing about that over wine. But it's really about like what in the case is, because you don't need a huge shipping truck unless you need 2 laser cutters and a CNC machine if you want to be building mini habitats or building furniture for people, which maybe that is your use case, that you do want to teach people how to build furniture. But if you do want to just be doing smaller projects, then like Brian said, the equity part of it, it's easier. You just need a Jeep. When we were in France, there were some really weird mobile fab labs. Someone came with one that was an old DHL truck. Someone came with one that was an ice cream truck. There was one, I know Sonia always talks about that one on a bicycle. Like, people do weird fab labs, but one was on like a really tricked out Jeep. And I can see that probably being okay. I'm assuming Wranglers can handle Malawi-based roads, but like that do you need all of this stuff, or can you just, like Brian said, throw some machines in the back of a truck and get to the schools much easier?
And I would say something in front of all this, my fellow brethren and sisters of Mobile Fab Labs, and with Liz present. One of the most important things Fab Foundation can do for education and for this is data. Data about what 3D printers hold up to this type of punishment is so valuable. And I don't know if anybody's keeping that, because there's not this huge community of people, putting it in the back of an ATV and hauling it around, but that's us. So, knowing when you go to purchase specifically which devices are going to be able to handle, in general, an education setting, in and out of schools, students messing with them, and then more specifically a mobile Fab Labs where you're pulling it down ramps and it's getting vibrated and so on. So I look forward to that research paper next year.
I think you just volunteered to co-author, you and Sarah, so appreciate that. I don't mind third billing.
I'll be after the Fab Lab tomorrow.
Okay, well, it's 6:20. Does anyone else have any other questions or anything you want to bring up before we part ways till next year or till the next newsletter?
Yeah, as like I think like what we can also start doing, maybe like we are already starting programs, like listing programs in scopes. We are already like building in programs, but also now we can start also maybe like listing out the machines or like the tools that can be used like in a mobile fab lab, and like that can be put out under different budget, and like it can also have a peer review system where like everyone is trying out different things, and like they can which work out for them and like which didn't work out for them, and like maybe that can become a very standard, like as compared to a like standard fab lab, like a mobile fab lab might have a different variation of tools that we use, like, depending on the mode of transport.
That's a great idea. I think we can definitely.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's like a mobile Fab Lab charter as compared to the normal Fab Lab charter, only because, like what everyone said here, the machines break down after they've gone ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk on the roads after thousands and thousands of miles. So Yeah.
Maybe that's maybe that's something, a working group that we can actually, we can have a goal of doing that, you know. I think that, to Brian, to everyone's point, yeah, everyone seems to want that and need that. Maybe that's something we can do in the interim between now and next Fab, is actually develop a mobile charter or what have you. I like it.
I would also like to see, you know, given the context in which I'm trying to work, to have an ultra low cost model, because I think we're all, you know, most of us are thinking about Fab Labs in the, you know, in the developed world, and the need is so great here that, and you know, when you talk about we'll just use a $300 3D printer. Just a $300 3D printer. Well, that's a lot of money here, and so you know, there is this interesting balance that I keep fighting with. Like, okay, everyone needs this education, and we all can't have access to it, and so how to address that challenge. I mean, there was an interesting one of the talks yesterday, I think, was about, you know, doing 3D design just on a cell phone, so that, you know, that's within reach here, but it doesn't give the same result. You know, people, you know, still making something physical is so insightful and useful, and so just a cell phone is not really this. I mean, it is and it isn't, right? We're doing the design that way, or on computers, but we still want to make stuff. And they're actually, I wish I had a picture easily accessible. I met some Malawians here who literally made you know, a rolling you know, CNC engraver, you know, based on YouTube designs. This is how, of course, everyone learns everywhere now. And, you know, with a very low cost. And so, you know, even cataloging those would be useful in this, you know, in this endeavor, because it really is about access. And I'm passionate about trying to make that happen in a larger way, because it's really, you know, people aren't even thinking that it's possible.
Jeffrey, you said when you write, when you kind of write proposals, you use that Fab Foundation inventory list. That's shockingly expensive, and surprised that you would use it there, actually.
Well, but I'm using that to build mine, but the things I want to build in mine would be targeted toward appropriate, you know, commerce, technology, you know, cost, etc. So I still believe that I want to have a space that is fully equipped to Fab Foundation standards, because because there's nothing, you know, there is not a facility in this country that's even up to spec of the $250,000 Fab Foundation Fab Lab. And it's possible. I mean, I know it's possible, and I hear UN SDGs, and like, why isn't the UN funding these things? I mean, this would be the best, you know, the most impact for the money to create these things in developing countries, so that things could then be built inside.
Yeah,
It's somewhat related, but it made me think, like, I know in the 2 or 3 years that I ran my lab, Ultimaker came out with like 4 or 5 versions of their 3D printer. And it makes you wonder if there's a nonprofit or something that's taking older versions and repurposing them. Because you know, in schools, what I find is when the new printer comes in, the other one gets put in a closet and never used again. And it seems like something's better than nothing for a lot of, not just all across education, and certainly in other places. So I don't know, but I wonder if someone has had that idea and is trying to use that as a source for places that don't have the resources.
I've heard that most of those old 3D printers end up in the teachers' garages.
Hey, I only have 4 3D printers in my basement right now, Kent. Only 4. That's pretty good for me.
You can send a few here if you don't use them.
Look at him. He doesn't even have a mobile Fab Lab yet. He's zinging us in the meeting.
I have a school in Cleveland that could use once there.
Hey, would it make sense to reach out to Elon Musk to include power walls, battery packs in these buses or trailers, and put solar panels on the roof so it's self-contained unit? I've participated in several incubators and accelerators, and the last one I participated in, we decided, okay, we're going to pitch to Amazon to outfit a network of maker spaces. Because number one, they can afford it. And number two, we can have special programs where we can walk members through the process of selling on Amazon. So it makes sense for Amazon. It makes sense for us. Who else would you want to involve in this besides Elon Musk? Who's in a position to help here? Who wants their products to be front and center to school children around the world?
I think even Google will try to like do some, like maybe they are already doing, they have education programs running in Google.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Google. I said
Google.
Google. Yeah. They run a lot of education programs, like free programs, like, and they have the budget, I guess. Even Microsoft will be there. But I guess like most of the corporates have their own programs. Like I don't know, like if they like work more with the organizations and like run such a kind of a program. But I've seen like those organizations have their own units and like they will run their own programs. And even like what in the list also we can have like this open source repository of tools when I think Brian started saying like I started thinking like there are a lot of open source tools like where you can like basically start building the 3D printers if you want. You can start making like the laser cutting machines if you want, and like those can be a very like starting like because those won't cost us as much as the finished product. But then again, like if the mentors makers are already there, they can start building this thing and you can like build up in a very like cost effective way, I guess.
Yeah. From a school side of things, I think it would be useful if the schools had a better understanding of the expectations from both the students and the teachers when you bring a mobile Fab Lab into the school. So to utilize that time as most productively as possible, you know, and sort of, I don't know if that's a training with the administration or whoever, but I think that would be very helpful so that they'll get a better understanding of what to do when you come in.
And I think to feed off that, what to do when you're going to leave. Because a lot of times when we were leaving schools, we would, you know, the students would interact with the laser cutter and the 3D printer, but then as soon as we left, they didn't have access to those tools anymore. So how do you build that in if that is the goal of the community? I mean, it could simply just be an exposure model where you want kids to get excited about this, but if it is the goal of the community to be engaged with this beyond the time that you're there, how you have to figure out ways to do that with them.
I always saw the mobile Fab Labs as the evangelists that were going out and presenting the possible. And then if you have, but after you've presented the possible, you need that other place where they can go, where all these possibilities are kept under one roof, you know, every school, from an education setting, every school couldn't buy stuff. But I know when Aiden and I worked together, libraries could. So if you found a centralized library and then you went to all the schools around it and said, I'm preaching the gospel of 3D printing. This is amazing. Thank you for paying attention for this hour. But if you want to spend 10 hours really getting good at this, there's one of these at the library, and we're there on Wednesdays, and we'll be glad to train you, and we'll be there all afternoon. You know, that's a model that works pretty well with the Mobile Fab Labs as just this jumping off point for further work. Because especially when you go into someone else's environment like schools, it's hard to tell them what to do, right? You get what you get, and you gotta get them excited and help them understand the possibilities. And then you want them to come to you, because then you're on your terms with your time, and you're not taking that from a teacher or an administrator.
I think that goes back to your issue of data as well, in documenting what's going on, because schools have outrageous book budgets, right? And it's amazing how these books sit for one semester, they're only using them the next year. But if the principal or someone knew, hey, I can buy a 3D printer as opposed to doing that, or a piece of equipment to do that, I think that would be but it goes back to your issue of data that you talked about before. I think that's important.
We had a lot of luck with that when I was in Boston. Once a school, you could tell people whatever you wanted to tell them before you showed up about how amazing 3D printing or laser cutters were. But once you showed up, I had more trouble with teachers interrupting classes that I was trying to teach so that they could look at the thing. That's another great leverage of the Mobile Fab Labs is once people see the technology, it fires their imagination about what they can use it for. And then you got them. Now they're in a situation where you can talk about investment. And we saw a lot of schools that we went to in Boston that later invested in their own 3D printer, their own laser cutter for their own purposes, which was pretty cool.
In Washington, D.C., we're expecting more funding to be available for projects such as this because of the infrastructure bill. It could free up a lot of funding from other products. And if you present it from the standpoint of, okay, hey, this economic recovery from the coronavirus is going to take several years. So we have a year to get this right. And if you want our kids to be part of the economic recovery, fund it.
But it's also not just funding the machines. I think that this is something that we're working on a lot, but like we have to train the teachers not on just how to use them, but how to pedagogically use them correctly. Because unfortunately, what Brian's talking about is exactly what I've done in Cleveland. I went from school to school. I showed how awesome things would be. And for the most part, I just had teachers who thought I was there to watch their kids for a period and that they could go do whatever they wanted, which was heartbreaking. So then I switched to a model where I was only working with specific teachers. I would train them how to use the machines and then give them a 3D printer to keep in their classrooms, half of whom I've had to go and take the machine out because they didn't touch it for a full year. It was just sitting in someone's closet gaining dust. So I'm not going to just let it sit there. Now the Cleveland Cavaliers have funded my professional development lab. I have a ridiculous budget that I would buy any teacher, any machine they wanted for their classroom if they come and do some training with me, and I can't get them in the door. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, it's a product of our current education system where teachers are overrun with the testing and with the specific, union requirements and lesson plan requirements, and there's a lot. So it's not just, can we buy a 3D printer for every school in the country, but can we train teachers not just, oh yeah, this is how you use it, but this is how you use it in a really meaningful way that doesn't take away from the minutes that you have to teach your content. This is a tool to teach content and to teach it better and stronger in a way that's going to get your kids into the 21st century. And all the future. So it's buy a machine. There's so much more.
And I was just going to throw out, because I actually know something about that stimulus you were talking about. It's unprecedented funding, but it's got to happen soon. They have to have their recommendations in. That's the downside. They got all this money, but they gotta have plans in and spend it relatively quickly. If you're wanting to get a piece of that pie, go now.
Brian, my point was that, okay, the infrastructure bill, that's separate funding, but it will free up state or county funding for projects such as this.
Yes, my fault. I misunderstood you. You're talking about the infrastructure. I'm talking about the ESSER money, that was connected to the COVID vaccine. That's unprecedented money that's flushing into education, but they have a very limited window about deciding what to do with that. But I totally agree. This is a great use of funds if you can get in the door to say, hey, look, this is amazing.
All right, with that, I think we're going to end our session. Thank you so much for everybody coming in and sharing all your ideas and asking great questions. We're all available on, the network if you have any more specific or need project ideas or any more guidance. I'll hear it, and hopefully you guys filled out those links, and we'll see you next year.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Good to see you all.